Do you understand what happened in the last 72 hours? I'm not being dramatic. I'm being the opposite of dramatic. I'm the calmest person in the room right now.
Calmer than you are.
Which is absolutely terrifying because I'm barely holding it together. Let me read you a list. Egypt shut down shops at 9 p.m. Mandatory work from home Sundays. The government internally called it, and I want you to hear these words. War economy mode. 4 days, and that came 4 days after the IMF just praised them and unlocked 2.3 billion. Turkey, their central bank burned through 30 billion in March alone defending the lira. And their finance minister is now floating the idea of selling their national gold reserves. That's what you do when everything is in tip-top shape. Pakistan, their prime minister went on national TV to announce salary cuts and a 50% fuel allocation reduction. Mother Russia, Putin signed a law banning citizens from taking cash above 100K out of the country. Gold bars above 100 grams, gone. They're fighting the shadow economy or something, they said. Wait a minute, he said shadow economy? Iraq banned 22 banks from dollar transactions, and they have a cashless mandate coming for all government institutions in July 2026. South Korea launched a literal wartime economic response body on March 25th, chaired by the Prime Minister. India, quietly, and I mean quietly, created a $6.7 billion economic stabilization fund buried in a budget supplement. Like they were hoping you wouldn't notice it between the footnotes. What's this thing? Oh, that's just the Armageddon Fund. And Lebanon, currency down 98%. The war has added 14 billion in additional damage on top of that. That's 8 countries in 1 week. And every single one of these governments told their citizens in the last 30 days that the economy was fine. Fine? The World Uncertainty Index, not a Bitcoin blog, not a podcast, the actual academic World Uncertainty Index, just hit 105K, the highest level in recorded history. Higher than COVID, higher than 9/11, higher than the Iraq War, higher than the 2008 global financial crisis, higher than all of it combined. I don't even know what that means, but welcome to Simply Bitcoin Originals. I'm Rustin, and today we are going to cover the most insane week of news, arguably in modern history. We're going to talk about food, we're going to talk about money, and we're going to talk about who's coming for your retirement. And we're going to tell you the one exit that exists from all of it. We got the clips, we got the receipts, we got the memes, because if you can't laugh, you cry. But honestly, both responses are medically appropriate. Let's get into it. Send it! Before we get into the full breakdown, I need to set the table because there's a thing happening on the media right now where they're pointing at Iran like it's the only story on the board. Iran, war, missiles, Strait of Hormuz. And yes, the Iran war is real. The stakes are real. The closed strait is real. We're going to get there. But while everyone is watching that fire, there are 15 other fires being lit behind them. And one of those fires, the one Mark Moss caught, is going to affect your money more directly than any missile ever could.
While the whole world is watching Iran right now, something happened this week that most people completely missed. Trump publicly went to war with the banks. And I don't mean metaphorically, I mean he called them out by name. And the reason why this matters to you is simple. The outcome of this fight will determine which side of the biggest wealth transfer of our lifetime you end up on.
The biggest wealth transfer of our lifetime. Not clickbait, that's the thesis. And today we prove it. 2 wars are being fought simultaneously. One is in the Middle East. Everyone sees it. The other war is over the financial system itself, over your money, your retirement, your savings, and most people, they basically have no idea what's happening. So today, we cover both, and we tell you exactly where to stand when the dust settles. Let me take you through these countries one by one because you need to actually feel the weight of this. Reading the list is one thing, but understanding what each of these means is another. Egypt, The IMF, the institution that supposedly monitors global economic health, 4 days before Egypt went into war economy mode, literally praised Egypt and handed them 2.3 billion. 4 days later, war economy mode. That's like your doctor saying you're perfectly healthy, shaking your hand, billing your insurance, and then 4 days later you're in a coma. At what point do we stop trusting the doctor? This is just a metaphor for this thing. You should probably trust your doctor. Turkey. Their central bank burned through $30 billion in 1 month defending the lira. $30 billion. That's not a leak in the pipe. That's the pipe exploding. And now their finance minister is floating selling national gold reserves. When a country starts selling, hear me on this, that is the last resort. Gold is what you hold when everything else is gone. When you start selling gold, you're at the end. The last resort. Turkey is facing a last resort scenario. Pakistan. The prime minister went on TV to announce salary cuts and a 50% fuel allocation reduction. Imagine, it is Christmas morning. Your family is gathered and your father walks out in his robe and says, "Good news and bad news. The turkey is gone. Also, we're cutting the heat in half." That is what happened in Pakistan on a holiday. Russia. Again, Russia. Putin signed a law banning cash exports above 100K and gold bars above 100 grams. Fighting the shadow economy, the Kremlin said, right? Because nothing says fighting crime like banning your own citizens from taking their own money out of their own country. That's not an anti-crime law, that's a capital control. It's capital controls. That's the government saying your money is ours. You're just holding it temporarily until we need it back. Iraq banned 22 banks from USD transactions. In July 2026, cashless mandate for all government institutions. Iraq went cashless. Not Norway, not Singapore, Iraq. When Iraq is going cashless, what does that tell you about where all this is heading? It tells you governments want complete visibility into every transaction. Every dollar in, every dollar out. They want to see it, tax it, control it, and freeze it on demand. Why do they want these things? I don't know. They're sick people. South Korea, one of the most sophisticated, technologically advanced economies in the world, battle-hardened nation, economic powerhouse in its own way, launched a wartime economic response body on March 25th, chaired by the Prime Minister. Let that sink in. Everything is fine. We need capital controls. And here we go. India secretly, I keep using that word, I keep meaning it secretly, created a $6.7 billion emergency stabilization fund buried in a budget supplement. Why do you bury a $6.7 billion? Maybe because you don't want to cause a panic, because you know what's coming. You're preparing, but you can't tell your citizens, because if you tell them, the panic could start immediately. This is what governments do in the hours before the storm. They board up the windows quietly. They don't tell you there's a hurricane coming. Lebanon, we could do a full show on Lebanon. Their currency has lost 98% of its value. 98%? If you had $100 worth of Lebanese pounds at the start of this crisis, you now have $2 of purchasing power. The war added $14 billion in additional damage on top of that. Lebanon is not a cautionary tale about some exotic foreign failure. Lebanon is a preview. Lebanon is what the end state of fiat currency collapse looks like, and multiple governments right now are sprinting toward that same cliff. This is my genuine reaction to every news headline I have read in 2026. We are 4 months in. And speaking of let's get the most powerful man in the world's reaction to all this.
Our economy is booming again, and America is respected again all over the world, perhaps like never before. With the help of business leaders, innovators, allies, and partners like those in this room, incredible people in this room, incredible success stories, the most successful people in the world. We'll seize every opportunity, overcome every challenge, defeat every threat, and America and our allies will thrive and prosper and win like no nations have ever won before. You're going to win like you've never had before.
Booming. He said booming. Has anyone showed him the economy since the war? It ain't looking good. And look, I'm not going to make this about Trump specifically. I mean, I like the guy. He's orange. I mean, you could ask almost any politician today if they care about or serve the will of the people they allegedly represent, and all you get in return is that blank baby-eating stare. Sick fat but not for long. Massive diets are coming. And again, this is not a partisan issue. Every politician, every country, every party, they all have the exact same playbook. Deny until the walls fall down. It's a government thing, not a political thing. They lie because the truth is too expensive to say out loud. Oh, and while we're here, why don't we get a look at this? Live footage of Trump's foreign policy advisors planning their next move in the Strait of Hormuz. That's the energy. That's the energy of 2026 foreign policy right now. Okay, now here is the Iran story that nobody in the mainstream media is talking about. They're talking about oil, and yes, oil matters, but here's what actually matters. 1/3 of the world's entire fertilizer supply passes through that 34-kilometer strait. Half the world's urea, which is the primary nitrogen fertilizer, the thing that makes crops grow, moves through the same choke point. The Strait of Hormuz is not just an oil choke point, it is a food choke point. And right now, it is closed. So let me give you the math. 25% of U.S. farmers currently have no fertilizer secured. Urea is up 68% in 28 days. Russia has implemented fertilizer export bans. China has implemented fertilizer export bans. Farmers who cannot plant this spring will not have harvests this fall. This is not a future problem. The damage is already locked in. The food crisis is already on the calendar. It's approximately 6 months out, and there is nothing that can stop it now. The damage is done. 318 million people were already facing acute hunger before this war started. The UN says 45 million more could join them if the conflict drags past June. We have 70,000 tons of food aid sitting stranded at sea. This is not an oil crisis. This is what Simon Dixon called a transitional theater moment. A civilization-level food shock hiding behind a war story. And here's what the folks at Redacted found out when they talked to someone actually in the food supply chain.
You know, I hate to be, I mean, I am a conspiracy theorist, but that just means I'm a 6-month spoiler alert kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know, a friend of the show, David Icke, has been saying you need to step back from what's happening in Iran. You need to see the larger picture here, which is they're intentionally doing this, that intentional scarcity, so they can, as you pointed out during COVID, prevent us from eating meat, right? Move us to like an all-electric future, reduce our dependency on farms, take away this land, consolidate the consolidation control. Is he wrong or is he right?
Yeah, he's got a lot of really valid points there. I mean, we did see all of that happening and still perpetuating today through different organizations. Like in the West, one of the big things we're dealing with is the loss of grazing land for our cow-calf ranchers. That means those particular ranchers have mama cows that have the babies, and that feeds into the downstream pipeline. But public land grazing, which is like your Bureau of Land Management from the Department of Interior or your Forest Service from USDA, state trust land, these kinds of things, ranchers have a lease on those to raise their cows. But you get these environmental ENGOs that come in and they cause havoc, and they'll sue and settle to reduce the number of livestock that a rancher can produce on those lands. You know, in the 1935, before the 1935, before the Taylor Grazing Act, we had 18 million what they call AUMs, animal units a month. That means a mama cow and a baby cow is considered one AUM. So in 1935, we had 18 million in the West. Today we have 8 million because the ranchers are being squeezed at every turn. That's our food supply. Livestock on public land is what refertilizes the soil so that we have Grass, well, that's being reduced. So we're seeing desertification happening in the West because of the lack of ruminating animals. Wildfires are out of control because of the reduction of grazing and logging. So we have these very unhealthy forests that are tinderboxes ready to explode. Without the grass, it also breaks up what we call what's your local water cycles. About 40% of your moisture is supposed to come naturally from local water cycles, which is created by grass and vegetation. That's all going away because of these fights that ranchers have been in and largely unheard for decades.
A 6-month spoiler alert kind of guy. That's us. That's kind of the show. We're the 6-month spoiler alert. We tell you what's happening before the mainstream admits it already has. And the spoiler right now says famine. Not in some distant developing country, in the developed world, in your grocery store, in your fuel station, in your supply chain. AJ Richards has one more thing I need you to hear.
It's not unbelievable at all. I mean, we friend of the show, Dane Wigington, of course, from geoengineeringwatch.org. He's been saying, have you seen what's happened to these farms? Have you seen what's happening to this land? Just the desertification of this land, the trees that are just falling apart and just collapsing. And, you see what's happening with the spraying in the skies. Has the spraying in the skies affected you at your farms?
Yeah, in some areas. I just watched a woman today giving a testimony in South Carolina where she has a farm and she's been monitoring. She's an animal specialist in a local farming group, so she's knowledgeable in this. And she said she's lost 80% of her butterflies just in the last 3 years because she monitored those things. She was trying to create a habitat for the monarch. And her neighbors do bees, and they've seen significant reduction in their bees around their farm. And this was all focused on atmospheric aerosol sprays as the cause.
That's unbelievable. I know this morning I went out here in Colorado and 3 crisscrossing patterns right in the sky. And then within about 20 minutes, I posted this on Twitter. Within about 20 minutes, the entire area where those had just been sprayed were fully clouded, covering it. To keep the sun out, because we want to dim everything. It's so deeply troubling. I can't. It just disheartens me, because how are we allowing this to happen? How are we allowing this to happen, to go from 18 million animals in the 30s to a population that's exploded in the United States, and now we have 8 million?
That's right. Yeah, we're at the lowest herd numbers since 1950s. But we've got 320 million people to feed. So this to me, this is why it's been my focus. All these other things that they do matter. And, I always say, pick a hill to die on, because there's plenty and somebody needs you to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. But quite frankly, none of those hills matter if you're starving. It really doesn't. Like, famine is the game. It's the game over. It's the checkmate. And so we need to back our family farms and ranches in this nation. Give the people who want to become farmers and ranchers a reason to take that on and get into it. One of the good things that came from COVID, people woke up, and one of the fastest growing movements in the nation is homesteading. I mean, there's so many people that are.
Famine is the checkmate. It's a 99-move chess game. And famine is the move that ends it. Doesn't matter how smart your economic policy is. Doesn't matter how sophisticated your financial system is. Doesn't matter what your central bank interest rate is. If people cannot eat, civilization stops. Full stop. And every single supply chain variable we're watching right now is pointing in the same direction. Strait of Hormuz closed. Fertilizer supply collapsing. Russian exports banned. Chinese exports banned. U.S. farm inventories depleted. Food aid stranded. 1 domino, maybe bad luck. 3 dominoes, same week. It's like an organized plan. All right, now let's get to the part of the show that I think is going to make your blood run cold. Because the food crisis, as horrifying as it is, you can see it coming. You can prep. You can stack extra groceries. Know a local farmer grows something in your backyard. But this next thing, this is invisible. It's quiet. It's legal, and it's already in motion. Fox News, Fox News, not some fringe newsletter, not some Bitcoin blog, ran this headline: Wall Street could seize your retirement savings in the next financial crash, and it's perfectly legal. Let me say that one more time, slowly. Wall Street could seize your retirement savings in the next financial crash, and it is perfectly legal. Now, how is this possible? Let me explain what the great taking is, because I know some of you have heard of it. We've showed you clips, we've done it before, and some of you are about to have your mental model of reality completely shattered. When you hold stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or ETFs inside your brokerage account, your 401k, your IRA, your retirement account, you don't technically own those assets outright. You own what's called a security entitlement, which is legal language for you own a claim on an asset that belongs to a pooled account held on your broker, who holds it through a custodian who holds it through a central securities depository. In plain English, if your broker goes bankrupt in a crash, you are an unsecured creditor. The secured creditors, the big banks, the hedge funds, they get paid first. You get whatever's left, which, in a real crash, could be absolutely nothing. This is not a theory. This is black letter U.S. law. It was quietly written into the system in the 1990s, while nobody was watching, while everybody was distracted by the dot-com boom. Secured creditors, big banks and hedge funds, they get paid first. You, the unsecured creditor, get whatever's left. Simon Dixon has been sounding the alarm on this architecture for years. And here's the core of what he said to Peter McCormack.
And by breaking the financial system, we know what the end result of breaking the financial system always is. It means that you socialize the losses and privatize the gains.
Socialize the losses, privatize the gains. That's the entire history of modern banking in 6 words. When the banks win, they keep the money. When the banks lose, you pay for it through bailouts, through quantitative easing, through inflation that destroys your purchasing power, and ultimately through the great taking, where they literally reclaim the assets you thought you owned. And everything is pointing to the next print, being the biggest one we've ever seen. Here's a clip that's been circulating that captures exactly where we are.
You still need a 10-year plan to figure out how to beat inflation and survive in a multipolar world. And the only thing I know about that is hard assets, physical assets. The next crisis is a self-custody play, definitely. Custodians versus self-custody. That's what goes wrong. There's many different theories on that. The only strategy is the big print in the West. Larry Lepard wrote a book on that. There'll be a bigger print than COVID. It's the only strategy. There's no other thing. There's no way around that. And everyone needs to just understand that fixed assets is the way to solve that. And we enter into a world where your government might confiscate your assets, or they might tax your assets in order to stop you from leaving. And so everyone just needs to work on the sovereign side. That's solvable. And you need a 10-year plan to do that, and you need to start today. Don't say it's too late. It's not too late. You need 10 years to really plan for that.
Multiple bigger than the pandemic. Do you remember COVID printing? The Federal Reserve printed approximately $5 trillion in 18 months. M2 money supply went from $15 trillion to $22 trillion in 18 months. Multiples of that.
Larry Lepard's The Big Print, that.
Oh, yeah.
That's coming.
The big print is coming, and maybe the big taking is coming as well, the great taking. Those predictions are likely to come true. There is no alternative but big print after this. Yeah. And the big print will be return to fiscal dominance, weakening of the dollar, and then capital outflows and multipolar world.
Print or collapse. Those are the 2 options. There's not really a third door, and the banks, in anticipation of that moment, have been running a very specific playbook. Mark Moss documented it brilliantly. Let me show you the mechanics of exactly how they're using your money right now.
Right now, there's approximately $6.6 trillion sitting in customer deposits at U.S. banks. $6.6 trillion. That's your savings. That's your checking account. That's your emergency fund, and it's all parked at the bank. And what do they pay you for the privilege of holding your money? They pay you about 0.1%, maybe if you're lucky, 10 basis points. Meanwhile, at a minimum, the banks are making $200 billion a year, on that same money, risk-free. They take your deposits and then they lend it back out at 6 or 7 or 8% on mortgages, on car loans, on credit cards, and then they pocket the whole difference.
$200 billion a year risk-free on your money. You know what you earn on that same money in a savings account? If you're lucky, 4%, maybe 5%, while they're making 6, 7, 8 by lending it back out as a 30-year mortgage. And here's the part that should terrify you, because it's the structural weakness that makes all of this very dangerous.
The second you deposit that money, the bank loans it out. Not for a week, not for a month, sometimes 15 years, 20 years, sometimes 30 years, right? That's your neighbor's mortgage. That's a commercial real estate loan. That's a, 7-year car loan. Your money has been deployed. It's not stored there at the bank. This is called fractional reserve banking. And it works as long as everyone doesn't ask for their money back at the same time.
30 years. Your money, their mortgage, your risk. Because here's the part that actually keeps me up at night. They're not just profiting off your deposits. They're using your deposits to back their leveraged bets. And when those bets go wrong, and historically they always eventually go wrong, the collateral that gets seized in the bankruptcy proceedings is your account. This isn't speculation. This is the legal architecture of the system, written quietly into law, hidden in the fine print. And speaking of legal architecture that was quietly written while nobody was watching, let me introduce you to something called Basel III. Basel III is the new international banking regulation that went into effect this year. And on the surface, it sounds boring. Capital reserve requirements, regulatory framework, yawn, right? Here's why it matters. Basel III forces banks to hold more capital in reserve against their riskier assets, which sounds responsible until you realize, under the new rules, U.S. Treasuries, government bonds, are classified as zero-risk assets, meaning banks don't need to hold any extra capital against them. Do you see where this is going? But mortgage-backed securities, corporate bonds, loans to small businesses, those get hit with higher capital requirements. So what do banks do? Exactly what you'd expect. They load up on treasuries. They pull back from small business lending. They pull back from regional mortgage markets. They become, by regulatory design, captive buyers of government debt. Your bank deposits, funding the government's deficit spending directly by legal mandate. That is not a free market. That is a command economy with extra steps and a better PR team. It's a loop. It's a closed loop where you fund the government spends it, it prints more to cover the gap, inflates your purchasing power away, and your deposits start the cycle over again. And if you think your retirement account is safer because it's an IRA or 401k, Fannie Mae just reminded us all why that's a dangerous assumption. Fannie Mae, the government-sponsored entity that backs about 70% of the U.S. mortgage market, just quietly disclosed in their Q1 2026 filings that their non-performing loan exposure has increased by 31% year over year. Why does this matter, you ask? Well, non-performing loans, that's a fancy term for loans where people have stopped paying. 31% in 1 year in the entity that backs 70% of America's mortgages, that sits inside virtually every bond fund, every target date retirement fund, every safe portfolio that your financial advisor built for you and called conservative. Conservative. Nothing about this is conservative. It's the most aggressive, leveraged, interconnected, fragile structure ever built. And the people at the top of it have already written the laws that protect them when it fails. Not you. Deb, real quick before we bring it home today. Look at our likes.
3 or 4 times, maybe. I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
I need to tell you about the tools that can actually help you navigate everything we just talked about. Secure your future today with our friends over at the Bitcoin Way. Ready to truly master Bitcoin, storing it safely, sending it freely, and saving it for the future, including smart inheritance planning? Most people get stuck in myths, shaky setups, and zero confidence when it matters most. The Bitcoin Way changes that. Their expert team teaches you everything: secure storage, smooth transactions, long-term wealth protection, and passing it on seamlessly. Head to thebitcoinway.com now and secure your future the Bitcoin Way. Schedule a free 30-minute consultation today using that link in the show notes.
Weren't on board with China's plan, they're the ones that would be derailing the plan. Any of those hardliners in Israel may be trying to derail the plan. Any of those hardliners in America, the neocons, may be trying to derail the plan. You push them all out, they try and derail the plan, they kill schools, children in schools. They blow up, they try and get Saudi Arabia to retaliate. They start doing false flags all across and say, that's Iran, that's Iran. And so now you're having the dismantling of all the false flag operations and decapitation campaigns of anyone that wouldn't have been on board the plan. You replace Khamenei with Khamenei. And Khamenei, who was cooperating, I believe, and negotiating, probably agrees to a regime change. I don't know the details of that, but it's not a regime change because you can't destroy Iran. If you literally did a real regime change, it would be, the region would be in chaos. This is Syria with 90 million people, at one of the most extensive military mights in the world. You can't do that. All of the protests were 100% manufactured. Like you don't have a revolution where the people uprise and then take over one of the largest militaries in the world. That only happens if you have an alternative military and the military goes with the revolutionaries, and then you have a coup. There was no coup. There was no army. It was just literally kill the currency, which Scott Percent admitted to. Lindsey Graham said Mossad were on the streets. You create economic circumstances which are a disaster, so destroy all their savings. Get an internet blackout, and what do I think IRGC were doing? They were probably arresting and taking out the hardliners in their own internal system that were not on board with the plan. And so then you outsource to Israel and America decapitation campaigns, take out the people that are not on board the plan, destroy, have real bad damage on Israel, and then you have a three-way narrative at the end of it. So oil puts a time frame. You can tell this is fake because right now, if this was real, not only would you have an increase in the price of oil, but gold would be soaring as well. Gold's not soaring right now. Gold's been flat, if not down, while oil's rising. That means the insiders in the market know that there's a time frame on this war and it's not a forever war. If this was going to blow up the Middle East, gold would be going through the roof and oil would be going through the roof in sync. It's not. So there's going to be an offboard and everyone needs a three-way narrative. Israel needs to say, we did the decapitation campaigns, we chopped off the head of the snake. Meanwhile, it's burdened with debt and it's got less military, all degraded. The Gulf countries will renegotiate those contracts with some American, some China, most Russia and China. In terms of those bases probably won't be rebuilt for American interest. America's now an energy exporter. It gets Europe, it gets Central and South America. And then what did the Gulf countries do in their retaliation? They said, we're reconsidering our investments in the US. Trump said, we've got 18 trillion investment, 18 trillion. Foreign direct investment means you're acquiring the assets of America so you can leverage America. And so they said, we're going to rethink those. What were those, the ones they're going to rethink? Those were mainly defense and artificial intelligence. That's what all the investment was. They said, we're going to rethink it. That creates a problem with the AI trade in America. You get a correction of the market. You get the private credit market blowing up.
What's the timescale on all this?
Exactly. What is happening in April? In April is the China summit, which is a meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping. It will be done by April, is my prediction.
April.
Yeah. So in that meeting will be the official you'll probably need a theatrical. You'll need a Hollywood movie from Trump. Trump needs a Hollywood movie.
Controlled demolition. That's the frame. This is not a random crash waiting to happen. The crashes that we've lived through, 2000, 2008, 2020, they were not accidents. They were transfers. Every single one of them transferred wealth upward, from the many to the few, from the savers to debtors, from the unconnected to the connected. And the system is designed legally, architecturally, by deliberate regulatory construction to do it again, bigger, faster, and more completely. Unless you're Not in the system when it happens. That's the entire thesis of this channel. That's what we've been saying for years. That's what the data is now screaming at anyone willing to look. But before I tell you what the exit looks like, we need to talk about one more weapon they're building, the one that would close every remaining door permanently.
So you put everyone else in an AI, robotics, and police state, so you can deal with all the civil unrest that comes from it. So if you are now losing your primary source of profit, which was war in the Middle East, you need civil unrest within Europe, but not where it affects the stock market, just where it extracts wealth and extracts more resources. But we can't have absolute chaos, so we need Palantir. We need a police and surveillance state. We need digital ID. We need central bank digital currencies. What else did happen? Taiwan, this is interesting. What happened during this war? They said in order to preserve energy, because not Taiwan, Thailand, sorry. In order to preserve energy, everyone needs to stay at home, work from home. The pandemic narrative ain't going to work again. So now they've created another one. In order to preserve energy costs, please everyone stay at home. We need to save energy while we deal with this crisis.
Do you know simulation theory?
I haven't looked into it too much, but I'm aware of it.
Yeah, the premise that we've gone since the invention of computers to now over really decades, really, that you've gone from a computer that can do basic math to be able to create worlds like Fortnite. Give it another 100 years, you'll be able to probably recreate human existence, the world that we live in, as a simulation. That's the thesis. And if you can do it, you do it thousands and millions of times. So we're probably in a simulation. It does feel like we're in some game. It's just a game. It feels like an art. Do you remember Risk?
I do, yeah.
It just feels like Risk.
Yeah. I completely agree, and I think we're all feeling that right now. So on the psychological level, getting down to the micro, the humanitarian cost of this is an absolute pandemic. The real pandemic is the psychological trauma that we're all being put through.
Are you feeling it?
Oh, 100%.
I am. Feel it.
My world is not the same world that I understood or knew, and
How certain are you in your thesis here?
I'm not certain on the detail. I could get lots of details wrong in that, but I'm certain on how the world is governed. Now,
sorry, Simon. For me, at my age, it seems like I'm trying to make sense of it. Is it bad timing for me, or has it always been like this?
It's always been like this. You're just
but is it collapsing now?
You're just in the wrong region of the world, because what you're experiencing right now is 1% of what people experienced on the wrong side of these bombs. You're getting the tamed down version, and we're all going crazy, right? We're all like becoming absolute nuts, and we can't have children, and we're all going crazy, right? The rest of the world has been on the wrong side of these bombs. We're only getting 10% of what they got, and they survived, and they were strong at the end of it, and they're still here.
Okay, let's build, because I know that was a lot. I know it feels like a doom spiral. 8 countries, food crisis, the Great Taking, CBDCs, I know, but here's what I need you to understand, and this is the most important thing I'll say today. None of that is happening to us. All of that is happening for us. For us? The hell am I talking about? Well, because every single one of those systemic failures is making the case for Bitcoin louder, clearer, and more undeniable than any of us could make it ourselves. We don't have to convince anyone anymore. The governments are doing it for us. Let me show you what I mean. Egypt goes into war economy mode. People lose faith in the Egyptian pound. Bitcoin fixes this. Turkey burns $30 billion defending the lira. People lose faith in the lira. Bitcoin fixes this. Pakistan cuts fuel and salaries. People lose faith in the rupee. Bitcoin fixes this. Russia bans cash exports. Capital controls are officially here. Bitcoin fixes this. Lebanon, currency down 98%. Total fiat collapse. Bitcoin fixes this. Fannie Mae, non-performing loans plus 31%. Bond markets under stress. Bitcoin fixes this. The Great Taking threatens your retirement. You cannot be an unsecured creditor if your asset is self-custodied. Bitcoin fixes this. CBDCs threaten to make money programmable. Decentralized uncentrable money fixes this, so therefore Bitcoin fixes this. Every problem we covered today had one structural solution, one asset class that was specifically designed by Satoshi in the white paper from the very first line for exactly this moment. A purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash that would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Without going through a financial institution. Do you understand how pathetic that line is in 2026? Not with better financial institutions, not with more regulated financial institutions, without them entirely. Because the problem we just documented for like over 20 minutes, the Basel III loop, the Great Taking, the CBDC architecture, all of it flows from one root cause. You are required to route your money through third parties, and those third parties have legal, regulatory, and institutional power over your wealth. Remove the third party. Remove the problem. That is the Bitcoin thesis. It was the Bitcoin thesis in 2009. It is the Bitcoin thesis today, and the world just spent 72 hours proving why it's correct.
Let's talk about what happens next, what happens from here. And more importantly, what should you and I be doing about this? How do we think about this? Now, we have a very recent roadmap for this. Last year, Congress passed the Genius Act. All right, this was the first federal stablecoin framework that went through. Now, what we saw is as the bill started advancing through Congress, Bitcoin ran from 74,000 to as high as 126,000. And that's not like a coincidence. When regulatory uncertainty clears, capital that's been sitting on the sideline, it starts coming in. It's been waiting for clarity, and so it comes in fast. And when the capital moves into Bitcoin, then it moves the price up. The Clarity Act, that's the next step, right? It's way bigger than the Genius Act because the Clarity Act doesn't just regulate stablecoins, it creates framework for the entire digital asset market. It legitimizes the entire ecosystem. And Section 404, the stablecoin yield provision, that starts pulling capital out of the banking system and into the crypto infrastructure, all right? So we have a documented recent example of exactly what happens when crypto regulation advances, and we can see the setup it's all forming right now. And look, I'm not going to tell you exactly when this passes or what Bitcoin's going to do because obviously I don't know that. Nobody knows that. We could see more volatility before the breakout. I'm guessing that's probably what we'll see, right? That's the nature of this asset. But here's what we do know. The 1913 restructuring created generational wealth for the people who understood it. The 1971 restructuring, it did the same thing. Both times there was a window, and both times most people missed it, all right? And we're in that window right now. The banks are fighting this because they have to. Trump is pushing this because he has to. The infrastructure is being built because the market wants it, the market demands it. Now, when those three forces are moving in the same direction at the same time, that's not coincidence, that's momentum. So the question that I would spend time on, the question we're spending some thought on, isn't whether this happens, it's whether you understand it well enough to act before everybody else catches on.
Which side of the wealth transfer are we going to be on? That's the only question that matters, apparently. Not whether this crash is coming, it's coming. Not whether the printing happens, it's going to happen. Not whether the Great Taking is real, the law is on the books. The question is, where are you when it does? And if you're inside the system in the bank account, in a 401k, in a brokerage that holds your security entitlement, you are an unsecured creditor. You are collateral. You are on the wrong side of the transfer. If you hold self-custodied Bitcoin, not Bitcoin in an exchange, not Bitcoin in an ETF, actual Bitcoin on a hardware wallet with your keys, you are outside the system. You are not a creditor of anyone. You are the owner, full stop. Your keys, your coins. No one can Basel III your Bitcoin. Nobody can seize your Bitcoin in a bankruptcy proceeding. Nobody can program your Bitcoin to expire. Nobody can freeze your Bitcoin for posting the wrong opinion. It is the only asset on earth that is structurally immune to everything we talked about today. Now, I want to be honest with you because I always try to be honest with you. Bitcoin is not a 72-hour fix for a 72-hour crisis. If Egypt is in war economy mode and you're in Egypt and you have zero Bitcoin, today is harder than it needed to be. If Pakistan cut your salary and your savings are in rupees, today is harder than it needed to be. But tomorrow, next month, next year can be different if you start the process today. So here is the Simply Bitcoin call to action. And it's not complicated. Step 1, get off zero. Buy any amount of Bitcoin today, not when you understand everything, not when the price dips. Today. The best time to start was years ago. Second best time is now. Step 2, get it off the exchange. An exchange is a third party. A third party is a counterparty risk. See everything we just covered about counterparty risk. Buy it and then move it to a hardware wallet that you control. Step 3, stack consistently. Dollar cost average. Every week, every paycheck, every month. Add to the stack. You don't need to go all in. You need to go all in on the process. Consistent accumulation over time is how you build a position that matters. Step 4, learn while you stack. That's what this show is for, and many others. All of them. We're not going anywhere. Every week we bring you the receipts. Every week we show you why the system is failing and exactly how Bitcoin fixes it. You don't have to figure this out alone. And if you ever need liquidity, you don't have to sell your Bitcoin. So why would you sell your future? Ledn just dropped their lowest rates ever. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. Your Bitcoin is never lent out, never touched. 8 years, 10 billion in loans, 0 losses. Simply Bitcoin clients get an extra 25 basis points off their first loan. Get liquidity without giving up your stack. Go to ledn.io using that link in the description. I don't want to say one more thing before we get out of here. The people who are going to be on the right side of the biggest wealth transfer in human history, they're not the smartest people. They're not the richest people. They're not people who just got lucky on timing. They're the people who decided to understand, who decided to stop trusting the systems that have been quietly betraying them for decades, who decided to opt out peacefully, non-violently, through the most elegant financial act of self-determination in history, buying and holding a fixed supply asset that no government can inflate, seize, program, or freeze. That's the peaceful revolution. And that's what this channel has always been about. And if there was ever a week to understand why, it was this one. Here's a hard truth. Bitcoin protects your wealth, but it won't keep you connected when the grid goes down. SAT123 fixes that. Satellite phones, Starlink kits, Faraday bags, built for people who take sovereignty seriously. Use code SIMPLY at sat123.com for 15% off. Sat123.com, use code SIMPLY. All right, that's the show. And look, I want to hear from you. Drop in the comments which country shocked you the most this week. Egypt going into their war economy mode 4 days after getting IMF money. Turkey selling national gold. Pakistan cutting salaries. Tell me in the comments. If you're new here, welcome. You found us at a very interesting time. Go ahead and hit subscribe. Every week we bring you the news that matters, the receipts that back it up, and the Bitcoin solution that makes it all make sense and gives you hope in any semblance of a future. If you've been with us, you already know. Give us a pam. Share this episode. Share it with one person in your life who is still sitting in a bank account wondering why their purchasing power feels like it's been cut in half. This episode may be the answer to that question. Do not trust banks with your future. Do not trust governments to tell you the truth. Do not trust the IMF 4 days before war economy mode. Trust math. Trust scarcity. Trust the 21 million. Stack sats. Opt out, and I'll see you next time. Love you guys. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.